What's up, everyone? Mike here from The Art of Guitar. I've had a few questions about the book. Sometimes you can see my bookshelf on the other side here, and it's full of books and magazines, and a few people have asked about certain ones that I have, and it made me realize that I should probably let you know the top books that influenced me when I was learning guitar and still to this day. And I came up with about 14 books that really stood out above the rest, and I wanted to share those with you today. So let's get started. And just a side note, these are not in any specific order. It's not best to worst or anything like that, or worst to best. So just keep that in mind. The first series I want to talk about is the Jamie Aebersold book series. I think that's how you pronounce it, Aebersold. Anyways, before this, my improvising wasn't that good, especially in the jazz world. And this book is great because it right away throws you into an improvising situation before you even know what you're playing in a Dorian mode, and you have to play to these backing tracks. And it's a little bit cryptic at first because the first few pages are a bunch of diagrams and it just seems crazy at first. But if you really dig in deep and get to know what they're talking about, pretty soon you'll find that you can go to their other books in the series, because they have minor blues, they have all these other books. They're probably up to hundreds of them now that you can keep exploring and better your jazz improvising. You know, when you play scales and sometimes you're not really sure what to do with them, I ended up getting this book called Amazing Phrasing. And I thought it was going to be a little cheesy because of the title, but I tried it out, and it was a great resource for me to be able to take what I already knew as far as theory went and actually make things come alive and sound very musical. So I'd recommend checking out Amazing Phrasing if you feel like you're stuck a little bit in a rut as far as being able to express yourself. It gives you some really cool tips, and a lot of them stick with you. That's the best part of these books that I'm going to mention, is they don't just kind of go in one ear and out the other. They actually stay with you, and you'll find yourself using them in a lot of situations. One of the best blues books I've ever learned from is the Blues You Can Use series. And you'll find out right away when you start. There's play-along tracks. There's really well-explained lessons before each song or each etude that they teach. And it's a really great way to start to take whatever you're doing now and mold it a little bit towards the blues world. So even if you're a metal guitar player and you want to play some blues, this is the kind of series you want to go after. He doesn't spend too long explaining everything before they jump in, so that's another good part. If you're a little bit impatient, you can get right to playing. But you can see, if you know a few pentatonic scales right off the bat, you can already start with this book, and then he teaches you how to go beyond them pretty quick. I went through a flamenco stage where I really wanted to get good at it, just because I saw a few amazing players and I was very inspired. So I picked up this book, and it wasn't the first one I picked up. A few of them that I picked up were decent, but they didn't really, they didn't really get me to playing right away. They had a lot of explanation, the history of it and all that, which is great, but I really just wanted to start playing that awesome percussive rhythmic style. So this book in particular really gets you into it right away. You could follow along to they have a sheet inside of like a lead sheet that you could follow along to. And this particular one came with the CD, but I also bought the video for it because I really thought watching the hand techniques were very important to make these sounds work. And so before I knew it, I was doing all these percussive, rhythmic type sounds that I always wanted to do, and it was pretty easy to follow along to. I can't really pronounce all the techniques, but I was able to do them pretty quickly, and it even inspired me to grow my picking hand nails out. And so I went on vacation once to Europe for 2 weeks. I let my nails grow out, and then I came home and I was sounding pretty awesome, but then I had to go back to jiu-jitsu and I couldn't have long nails, so I had to cut them again. You'll notice a lot in our videos we talk about intervals and how they build chords. And a lot of that can be learned in this amazing book called, I have it right in front of me, Understanding How to Build Guitar Chords and Arpeggios. It's not the best name for a book. It's not very catchy, but it's by Mel Bay, actually put it out. And it's one of the best books with diagrams and the explanations of how to actually put chords together. And they show piano diagrams, and they show how far away the notes are from each other. And it really influenced how I teach building chords and arpeggios. So if you find that all a big mystery, besides our website, go ahead and check out this book, because it goes into very good detail about how to put together chords and arpeggios in a very understandable way, that if you even have just a little bit of music theory under your belt, you should be able to handle it. And this is a book that I still pick up a lot to this day. There's so much to it. It teaches you the ins and outs of jazz guitar. And the Aebersold books do as well, but in the improvising world, this is more of an overall series. And I've tried a lot of different jazz series as far as method books go, and to me, this is the best one that I've come across. And it really gets deep into things and throws some etudes at you that you get to play. So as soon as you learn how to do, let's say, a 9 chord, they put it into a song that you can play through. And same with the scales. They have a chord part of the book, a rhythm part, and a lead part with scales. And so once you put them together, you feel like a pretty complete player. Okay, I used to use this book to sort of see where beginning students were at as far as in their mind, because if you pick up the book one of this series and try it, it's all notation reading. It could really tell you where you're at. So it's either going to depress you or it's going to inspire you. I just got the whole complete version of it, and it's funny, it's called the Mel Bay's Complete Method for Modern Guitar, but there's like a really old guitar on the cover. But what's great about this is it's hard. Of course, a lot of the songs are public domain, really old songs that maybe you've never heard before. But once you get a hang of it, you can see it doesn't really matter what the song is. It's really about learning how to play using notation. My classical playing was terrible for a long time. And my friend, who was a classical genius, he told me to try pumping nylon. And then I heard someone else talk about it that same day. So I thought it was sort of a sign from the universe to get this book. And so I picked up pumping nylon. And I realized how weak I really was at that style. And so I really had no idea what to do with my right hand, even how to hold it or anything like that. Remember, I started off as a metal player exclusively, metal and rock player. So here I am trying to play classical on my electric guitar. And I got pretty good to the point where I actually bought a classical guitar. And everything felt way better once I did, by the way. But that book really got me started in that direction. If you're not able to read music, be sure to get the tab version of this. But it can really get you started in the world of classical playing. And then who knows, you might catch on to it and grow a liking to it and want to go a whole nother direction with your playing. One of the biggest questions I get is, what scales do I play over certain chords? And so I thought, what better book to get than Scales Over Chords? It just sort of stood out to me when I was looking at all the books at the store one day. And so I picked it up, and it goes really in depth about which scales and modes work over certain situations. And this is one of those books that just throws you right in, shows you some examples, and then before you know it, you're trying new things. That's the most important thing. You're not just stuck with one scale, trying to do a whole bunch with one thing. It teaches you how to open up the neck to all the possibilities, and then it makes guitar a lot more exciting. And then over time, you master that, and you feel like you can pretty much do anything. A book that constantly gets used where I practice, it's kind of funny because the cover's all torn up because I've used it so much, is Soloing Strategies. And these are awesome solo etudes that are all in a certain specific order. They start off teaching you with basic scales, and by the middle of the book you're already doing some modal playing, and then by the end it just gets really insane. But you feel pretty excited when you learn, like for example in the middle there's a Mixolydian song that just taught me so much. It's another one of those books that when you play through it, you take things with you. So I think in that one solo, there was about 6 to 8 things that I still find myself doing when I'm improvising now. And it's automatic, but sometimes I have to think back and go, where did I learn how to do that? And a lot of it came from this book, Soloing Strategies. All right, this guy named Troy Statina, I think that's how you pronounce it, put out this metal book series for metal guitar playing and lead guitar playing. And I remember thinking the cover was a little bit cheesy because it was him kind of posing all crazy. But what I really like about his teaching, it taught me a lot about teaching, by the way, is in one particular book, he started off with one progression, and he taught how to do arpeggios using that progression. And then as the chapters went on, that same progression stayed through the whole book. And what's great is he just showed you how to add one more idea to it, one more. This time we're going to do this and add tapping. And it really did this pyramid approach to kind of stacking knowledge, and it really taught me a lot about how to teach, like I said, but also how to play metal guitar using this chord progression that he chose. And it's funny because I thought, well, what if you're kind of stifled because you only know that one thing? Well, shortly after I got done with the book, I tried it in different situations, and I found out that it's very flexible. Once you understand the concepts, it can be used everywhere. That's sort of the idea of mastery, by the way. You see it in all things once you learn it. So a long time ago, I was asked to join a country band, and so I kind of panicked. I didn't know much about country guitar, so I ended up playing a lot of rock solos over country, which, by the way, back then, it was already starting to merge a little bit of rock into country, but I really wanted to play like the classic players, and then some of the modern players as well, like Brent Mason, even Vince Gill. If you ever heard him play lead guitar, it's amazing. But anyways, so I got this book. I wasn't expecting very much, but I realized that they throw these songs at you in these soloing situations. And they start off with a couple of basic scales that most of us know. And I started to use major pentatonic in a brand new way. I started to do the techniques that they showed me. And before I knew it, I was looking at the same scales that I've always known, but in different possibilities. So whenever I was in a certain situation, like, oh, now we're in G in a country situation, I had all these options. I started doing these cascading licks. I started doing these really cool pull-off licks that I never was able to do before. So if you ever check out some of my demonstrations, sometimes I'll throw in a country lick. It all comes from that book. Now, this isn't really a guitar method book, but it's more of a book that, kind of like the Troy Statina book, taught me about an overall idea. And this one was called Effortless Mastery. And when I first read it, it started to resonate with me that all these ideas of mastering something, especially effortless mastery, I like the idea of that, could be applied to guitar or music in general, to anything you do as far as instruments go. And so I really thought I was playing with way too much effort, way too much stress, and I'd get done with the show and I'd feel a little bit stressed out. So when I started to read this book, it really resonated with me that I could do all the things I do now, except have a much easier time doing it. I have a video out called How to Make Everything 90% Easier to Play, and that's where that came from. This book teaches you how to cut out all the stuff you don't need in order to just do what you want to do in the first place. And I had to save the guitar grimoire, I think I'm saying that right, grimoire, for last, because I didn't really jump on it early. Everybody kept talking about it, but every time I picked it up, it felt like I was picking up the Bible, trying to read through tons of text that I didn't understand. And so it kind of freaked me out early on, but I have to mention it because it helps so many people. And now that I look at it, now that I've been playing for a little while, it doesn't look as scary. It's kind of like when you look at a chord chart for the first time or one of those chord posters. It just seems overwhelming, like, oh no, there's 1,000 chords I gotta learn. But this book felt like that at first for me, but once you get into it, it goes really, really in depth. It's great for the guitar player who's kind of engineer-minded and they really want to know the ins and outs of every little thing. So if you're one of those people and you get into like the geeky side of guitar, the nerdy side, you really want to know what you're doing, you want to know to the finest detail about every scale, every chord, then this is the book for you. I believe I'm pronouncing it right, The Guitar Grimoire. And believe me, it can seem a little grim at first if you just take it at face value, but trust me, if you dive into it and give it a little bit of a chance, you could find a wealth of information. Okay, everyone, I hope that didn't feel like some Reading Rainbow book report. We'll catch you next time. Thanks.